Hey, what's up? Welcome to Wine Folly's Wine Wednesday Q&A. Today we're doing a talk with a wine region that a lot of people don't know too much about. This Q&A, we're going to meet with the wine region and learn a bit more about this wine, and I happen to have a couple of bottles with me. So, let's get started. I'm going to invite our guest right now. All right, looking for this wine region. This wine region sits in, and that's amazing. It's beautiful there. So I've invited our guest today, but I want to pop a bottle of one of these wines right now so you can see what this wine is all about. Hello, welcome.
Hi, Madeline. Hi. Thank you. How are you?
With me today is the director of the Asti Consortio in Asti. Are you in Piedmont right now?
Yeah, exactly. Right in the center of Asti, the city of Asti, which also gives the name to our wine.
So a lot of people don't know this, but
Yeah.
Asti is one of the most popular wines in Piedmont.
Yes, I mean, it's of course one of the most historical wine all over Piedmont because it was first produced back in the 19th century, half of the 19th century. In 1865, it was first time produced by a company called Gancia that actually introduced for the first time a classic method wine in Italy. Uh, we can say that Asti is actually the first sparkling Italian wine ever made. At that time, it was a classic method. The second fermentation took place it's still taking place for those wineries that are still producing a classic method in the bottle, but many wineries are now embracing the Martinotti method, which is a lot more easier and direct to the aromatic profiles of the wine for the consumer. It's also easier to understand all the clear aromatic profiles of the grape and of the wine, of course.
So let's talk about this wine and what goes into it. And I think the number one thing that is essential to Asti is the grape variety. I've heard a lot, and I know Moscato Bianco travels far, but do you have any details about the history of this grape in the region?
Well, in the region, it was brought, of course, by many different grape varieties by the Romans that have been bringing the grapes that were used in Italy everywhere. They were conquering the European countries, but actually this grape variety comes from Asia, as many other varieties comes from Asia, and but has found the uh, perfect environment to thrive here in Piedmont, where over 10,000 hectares of Moscato Bianco are devoted to the production of Asti and Moscato d'Asti.
And
There are
I'm sure
also
you
other
guys
small.
could
Yep.
smell this wine right now because it is super aromatic. We're talking mandarin oranges, citrus blossom. It's floral. It's sweet smelling. It has this incredible nose, and I think that's one of the things that makes Asti so special is capturing these aromatics from Moscato Bianco so perfectly. Uh, can you tell me a little bit more? Because we've heard that Asti is the first sparkling wine of Italy, but what makes it the first sparkling wine of Italy?
Well, it means that it makes the tradition of winemaking in Italy because beyond Gancia, what Gancia did back in the days, also another important local enologist called Federico Martinotti. He was at the time at the end of the 19th century, 1895. He developed a new method to produce a sparkling wine, the so-called uh, Martinotti method, that is also known as Charmat method, back in at the beginning of the 20th century. He developed this method in order to produce in a much easier way uh, the sparkling wine using only steel tanks. At that time, he wasn't using steel actually, but he was creating these big tanks where the second fermentation could happen within these big vats, and that could allow wineries to control easier in an easier way the fermentation of the wine, because a second fermentation in the bottle is so complicated, especially when you have to deal with with a grape that is so rich in sugar that doesn't even need liqueur de tirage, for example. That was a really a key issue in the history of the sparkling method. That also that has also been embraced by many other appellation and wines all over the world.
Yeah, to name one that's your neighbor, maybe.
Yeah, our friends from Prosecco, they really took advantage from the Martinotti method. It's clear that this method highlights the aromatic profiles of the grape. So any kind of grape that you use in the Martinotti method really finds the immediateness of their profiles
What's
in
so
order to.
fascinating about smelling this wine is although it smells very sweet, there's actually a range of styles available in Asti that aren't
The
quite so sweet.
There are sweet, exactly. Historic has always been popular as a sweet wine, but starting from 2017, the producers were also allowed to produce lower sugar content version of Asti. Starting from 2017, they were allowed to produce till the extra dry version, but then we also made another change in the code of production, and starting from 2010, 20, you can also reach the pas dosé sugar residual, so it means no sugar at all. So you have a whole range of Moscato sparkling wine that actually covers all the needs of the consumers that actually love the style of a Moscato wine.
That's great because I love a wine that has a very aromatic nose and I love a dry taste. So to hear that Asti offers a dry style is very appealing to me as a casual sparkling wine drinker after work. So this is amazing
Great.
that and it just happened starting in 2017 and the rules were modified again in 2020. Is that right?
That's correct. Exactly. Yes. And it's going quite slow because, of course, all the people all over the world knows Asti and Moscato Asti for the sugar residual as a sweet wine. And but locally, we are implementing the consumption of this wine at least locally in Piedmont.
So in Piedmont, you can find more and more dry Asti wines. Is
Yeah,
that's
quite slowly, but actually you can find them around.
That's amazing. Well, I want to ask you about this region because Asti is a UNESCO World Heritage. And what makes it so special that it earned this classification?
There are a few reasons why not only the area of Asti, but the whole Langhe, Roero, Monferrato, which is the probably the most popular area for wine production in Piedmont, but also in north of Italy. There are a few reasons why the UNESCO rewarded this part of Piedmont with the UNESCO World Heritage. And the reason why it's because the Asti production has a strong connection also with the Canelli village, Canelli town, which is in the heart of the area of production. It's where all the production of Asti sparkling started. And actually, in those places, you can find many wineries that are still using their, we call them underground cathedral, because Gancia, when started to produce the Asti with the classic method, at that time, of course, it was not named Asti, it was just a Moscato champagne, but he started working in the same way that they were working in the Champagne area. So in the underground area of Canelli, there are kilometers of underground cellars that are still used to age the wine to produce the classic metal wines of the area. And that's one of the reasons why the UNESCO World Heritage has rewarded the Asti history as part of the UNESCO area of Langhe Monferrato.
That's incredible. And I just opened another
You're
bottle.
opening the Moscato d'Asti,
I'm
right?
opening the Moscato d'Asti. So I had just before I had opened the Spumanti, and it was a
Yeah.
drier style. It was labeled as Secco, actually, which I thought was very interesting. But this one,
That is
and
an explosion, should be, because the lower the alcohol, the higher is for the
and
aromatic profiles to come out to your nose.
this is low alcohol, but how low are we talking?
We're talking about for the Moscato d'Asti, the code of production requires between 4.5 and 6.5 alcohol percentage. So it's really low alcohol since the beginning, and it's very low in alcohol. And the fact that it's so immediate, so full of richness, doesn't even you don't even taste the alcohol.
That's amazing. And this wine, if only you could smell this wine right now, it is like a level more of aromatics than the last wine that I opened, which was extremely aromatic. So this wine, it's almost without being able to describe it, but it's a bit grapey, like lychee. It has these incredible rose notes. It's just all over the place with these beautiful floral and peachy aromatics. Just remarkable. So why does the less alcohol lead?
And the
Great
less,
question. Why does the less
yeah,
alcohol lead
that's
to more aromatics?
I'm not a chemical geek, but the thing is that it's a chemical connection of alcohol that the higher alcohol, the tighter it keeps the connection with the aromatics. The lower the alcohol, the aromatic profiles are freer to move around and also to capture your nose.
And it's definitely, I believe that this wine, and both the Asti Spumante is a full sparkling wine, like a champagne or a prosecco, whereas Asti, Moscato d'Asti, is only just sparkling. You can see in my
Yeah,
glass.
it's fizzy. Let's say we call it fizzy instead of the Asti, which is a sparkling wine. And the difference comes from the pressure that the carbon dioxide has in your glass. The code of production requires 2.5 of bar pressure for a Moscato d'Asti, while to become a spumante, to become a sparkling wine, you need at least 3.5 bar pressure. That means that also you can see the difference, you can spot the difference not only in your glass, but also from the bottle itself, because the Asti sparkling bottle has the mushroom cork that needs to be kept still with a cage, while the Moscato d'Asti only has a flat cork, the normal flat cork or screw cap. So that's an easy way to distinguish the two styles of Moscato and Asti.
This Moscato d'Asti is quite sweet. So all that sugar that would have gone to alcohol is instead maintaining sweetness in the wine. So those natural grape sugars are present in a glass of Moscato d'Asti. So it's sweet smelling and it's also sweet tasting. And it's, aromatically speaking, it's like if you could smell roses and now drink them
Yeah,
and they
yeah,
taste the way you
exactly.
want them to taste.
Great example. I mean, I think the Moscato grape wine, this Moscato d'Asti wine, it's the closest you can get from eating the berry of Moscato. It's pretty much similar, the taste you have from the berry than the one that you drink from the glass. So it's really one of the most immediate grapes in the vine version. Sorry.
Amazing. And this grape, we're talking about Moscato Bianco. Why is it such a special grape to work with, and why have the Asti producers continued to make this wine over hundreds of years?
It's special because as you said before, it's the most aromatic grape probably ever that you may find on earth. But at the same time, it's really complicated from the viticultural point of view, from a winery point of view, because when you decide it's really hard to pick the right time for harvest the grapes, because usually you have to consider the acidity level and the sugar level in order to decide when to pick. When these two elements are in balance, usually you go out and you pick the grapes. But in this case, with the Moscato grapes, you also have to consider the aromatic profiles that usually tend to mature later than sugar, and that happens usually when the acidity it's a lot lower. We need high acidity in order to balance the sugar in this wine. But if you
Mhm.
wait too long to have the aromatic profile at the top, probably you're going to lose acidity. So it's really tricky for those who are going to decide, for the wineries that when the wineries need to decide when to pick the grapes, it's really tricky. It's really hard to decide the moment, and that's why the consortium steps in to help them in order to understand when it's the right time. We have around 40 vineyard. We check constantly 40 vineyards all over the area of production in order to help the wineries to understand the right time for the picking. We analyze the grapes every week during summertime, and we share this information with the wineries in order for them to decide, to have all the elements to decide when is the right time for pick their grapes.
Thanks for everyone who's asking questions right now. I have a moderator who's reading them back to me, and I will actually be asking them in a few minutes. There's a couple of great questions coming in, but I'm
Yep.
curious to know. You talked about going to 40 different vineyards to test the quality of the grapes, which is a remarkable number of vineyards in the area, and that's because it's so dynamic. It's hilly, there's shady spots, there's high points, there's so many different. It's there's elevation vineyards, there's hillside vineyards, but um, how many producers in total are
In
producing
total,
Asti wines? About.
we have around 4,000 vine growers,
Okay.
but
Wow.
of course they're not all producing their own wines. Usually we have around 250 wineries that actually use their own grapes or buy their grapes from these 4,000 vine growers around. So we have,
Wow.
in the end, we are you may find around 250 wineries producing constantly Asti or Moscato d'Asti.
Amazing.
And yeah,
That's
and
for such a small area, 250 producers is a big number, and 4,000 growers means it's a very independent, handmade product. And I think
yeah,
that's one of
it's
the incredible things about Asti is you have these steep hillside vineyards. It's actually quite difficult. You can't just mechanically harvest everything. You actually have to go in by hand and tend the vineyards by hand. And
exactly.
this, like, I don't know, I know there's some very steep vineyards there, like remarkably steep vineyards. So still, if I go into a grocery store or a wine merchant in the United States, what am I expecting to spend for a high quality Asti wine? Like something that's actually going to be like, oh, this is a great example of what Asti is.
Yeah, usually you may spot the difference checking the label. Usually you easily understand when there is an estate bottle on the label or there is just a private label on the bottle.
So look
But
for
for
the
all,
date and the vineyard names on the label, perhaps.
usually there also this crew concept of also using vineyards named on labels, and
Amazing.
usually you may also find a specific name used here in Piedmont, but mainly in the area of production of Asti, which is Sori, Sori with the accent. That means kissed by the sun, and it refers to a hill which is in a highly position where the grapes have the ideal situation to mature because they are so high that they always get the breeze coming in from the south side, from the seaside, from the Ligurian Mediterranean area. But at the same time, the altitude helps them not to be stressed too much by the sun. So they have the right light during daylight, and they have the lower temperatures at night that really helps to get all the aromatics out from the grapes. And this is something important to understand really the difference between a single vineyard plot and a much and the production that comes from different areas, which are still good wines, but actually if you want understand a specific place, you have to search for one of these sorry concepts.
Speaking from my experience going into wine stores in the United States, across the United States, I'm shocked at the pricing. You can find an exceptional wine between, the high teens and the mid to high 20s will get you one of these wines made in a hillside estate, hand harvested, made by producers, 4,000 independent growers, and 250 unique producers in the region, which, you know, quality for dollar, hand picked grapes alone, that effort alone is a very expensive process. And it sounds like the growers are doing it themselves and they're either selling their grapes to the producers but they have essentially a vineyard that they have and they keep it going year after year producing these Moscato grapes.
Exactly. I agree
So
totally.
we built a guide on Asti because it is a fascinating region on Wine Folly, and you can access it at asti.guides.winefolly.com. It's one of our regional deep dive guides. And one of the questions that gets asked a lot because people want to get their certification in wine are the requirements for DOCG status in Asti. So can you tell us a little bit more about the nuts and bolts of what it means to be qualified and what the different qualifications of Asti wines are?
Yeah, DOCG, let's say, is the highest level for quality wines in Italy. Then below that, you have the DOC. Then you have, that means Denominazione Origine Controllata, while the G in the DOCG also means guaranteed. So origin of appellation controlled and guaranteed. That's my translation. And below DOCG and DOC, you have IGP, geographical indication of yeah, provenienza, Um, and then you have wine, table wine. These are the four levels of the Italian wine. Where Dios, we are at the top because first of all, we have over yeah, we have a great history behind that. As we have a great tradition uh, behind our bags, but and that's one of the requirements to become a DOCG. You need to show uh, that you have been producing the wine for a certain period with a certain style of wine, with a certain uh, recognition from the market. Because every time you try to make a step forward from DOC, for example, to become a DOCG, you have to show to the Ministerium of Agriculture, which in the end is the one that reward the appellation with a new status. You have to show that you have increased the awareness about the appellation, the quality of the wine, and of course you have brought to the community wellness and well-being for the local economy. So that's the few key issues that are considered when you want to move your wine in the pyramid of quality here in Italy. Of course, when you start, you have much easier. As long as you go towards the top of the pyramid, you have to strengthen the laws that are required to produce that wine. For example, one case could be that the bottling of a specific appellation should take place in an area. When you're required to become a DOCG, you need to restrict that area in a much smaller way in order to certify that you want to search for the top areas to produce that wine. I don't know if I was clear. It's
And
not so immediate.
and there are the styles you can find. Both Moscato d'Asti is a DOCG, and Asti Spumante is also a DOCG, and they have sweetness levels. And we know you might be familiar with the Dolce level as a sweet style of Spumante, but there's also now a Brut level, which is also DOCG classified. So those would be the ones to keep in mind. The Secco is not an official classification, is it? Or
The Seco is still part of the it's a
it is? Okay.
DOCG still. Yeah, it's part just a different level sugar level and
Brut being more like champagne levels of sweetness, which means not sweet at all, and Secco being in that
halfway.
sort of
Yeah,
dry style. It's still quite dry, but it's a bit more fruity. So this is a style that you can find now that is DOCG classified in ASTI. So for all you geeks out there trying to pass your WSET, that one's for
yeah,
you.
and there's another interesting fact concerning one of the former subzones of the area of production of Asti. We used to have three areas that were somehow specific for Moscato d'Asti: Santa Vittoria d'Alba, Canelli, and Strevi. Canelli, as already mentioned a few times before, it's somehow in the center of the area of production that has always been, as a subzone, one of the most considered one of the top end quality for grapes, and has decided starting from 2023 to become a DOCG on its own.
So that's
So
another fun fact for you. Canelli in 2023 became a DOCG, and Canelli is very interesting because it sits on more sandy soils. And if you've been following along on Wine Folly, you know that sandy soils will lighten the body, but also increase aromatics. So that's one of the key features of wines from Canelli is this bombastic aromatics coming from Canelli wines, which is why we can find them. And thank you for bringing up that Canelli is one. I forgot to mention that. That is a very keen detail. And for those who have the opportunity to travel to the area, it's fascinating to see, just fascinating to try the different wines throughout this very small region and how different they are because of soil types, the aspect of the hills, and that kind of thing. So this is amazing. It's amazing to find out that a wine that I drank when I just started drinking wine is actually a quite an interesting, intriguing, and in-depth wine with so much history. Is there anything that you think that you wished more Americans knew about with Asti wines?
well, of course, you're already considering this in the tradition. Being a sweet wine has always been seen, especially here in Italy, in the last few years, as a good to go pairing with desserts, with fruit, with usually with sweet food. But I already believe that in the United States you are a lot more open-minded to pair this wine with a lot more dishes. You don't need to only to think in one direction. And but because I'm seeing it when I come to the US that you often drink it as an aperitif, something that we're still not that used to do here in Italy. You drink it with spicy food. You drink it on Sunday barbecue. I mean, it's an easy wine, good to go in every time of the day. You have to celebrate something. You're just coming out from from the baseball ground, or you want to have something sweet and tasty, and why not? So it's always it's you're already embracing a different style of consuming this wine.
I
So
like
I'm happy to say that.
Moscato d'Asti after going for a long bike ride because you use so much carbs when you're on a long bike ride. You burn so many calories that the sugar is and the acid. It's like oh, it's magical, and you really taste the acid in the wines.
And it's natural. It's completely natural. You don't
Yeah,
add sugar in a Moscato. Moscato is sugar because it is rich in sugar, the grape itself, and the carbon dioxide. It's natural, comes from the fermentation. You don't add any gas to the wine. You don't add any every carbon dioxide. So it's a natural booster. Let's call it that way. It's natural Gatorade.
wow. This has been an amazing educational session today, learning more about Asti wine. And I will show you guys something in case you're curious to learn more and want to dial in your knowledge on Asti. This is the Asti guide that Wine Folly has released. And it's amazing because we can find the wines that are here and learn about the region and the sweetness levels and all this kind of stuff. But then you can actually pretty amazing. Let's find one that's got a lot of wines in it. See the wines from these individual producers that have added their wineries and wine information into this guide so that you can find the bottles with the vineyard names, the story, and look for a high quality bottle in your area. So I hope you learned a lot today and enjoyed this little Q&A session with the director, Giacomo from
Thank you,
Asti
Madeline.
Consortio. We really appreciate you filling us in
Thank
on
you.
this amazing region. Thank you.
Thank you for all your questions and all your followers. Hope to see you soon again. And keep up the Moscato wine,
All
Moscato
right.
d'Asti, and Asti sparkling wine. Thank you. Have a great day. Bye bye.
Bye.